The impossible challenge. The transport shuttle shuddered as it docked with the massive Zarian Council station, and Captain Maria Santos felt her stomach drop at the sight before her. Through the viewport, she could see the station stretching out, like a metallic city in space, its spiraling towers and gleaming domes housing representatives from over 200 alien species. This was humanity's first formal invitation to join the Galactic Council, and Maria knew that everything depended on the next few hours. Nervous? Asked Dr. Chen Wei, adjusting his glasses as he studied the readings on his tablet. The elderly scientist had been Maria's mentor since her academy days, and she could hear the concern in his voice despite his attempt to sound casual. Terrified, Maria admitted with a small smile. But that's never stopped us before, has it? Chen chuckled and shook his head. No, I suppose it hasn't. Remember, Maria, you're not just representing Earth today. You're representing every human who ever looked at the impossible and decided to try anyway. The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss, and Maria stepped into a world unlike anything she had ever imagined. The ceiling arched high above them, easily 300 feet up, and was covered in what looked like living stars that pulsed with gentle blue light. The air smelled of ozone and something floral that reminded her of jasmine, though she knew no earth flower had ever grown in this place. Aliens of every conceivable shape and size moved through the vast corridor around them. She saw beings that looked like walking coral reefs, others that resembled metallic spiders the size of horses, and creatures that seemed to be made entirely of shifting liquid light. Despite all her preparation and study, Maria felt overwhelmed by the sheer diversity of life forms surrounding her. Captain Santos, a voice called out, smooth as flowing water, but with an underlying resonance that made her bones vibrate. Welcome to Zarian Station. Maria turned to see their escort approaching, and her breath caught in her throat. The being before her stood nearly 8 feet tall and appeared to be carved from living crystal. Its skin was a deep blue that shifted to purple in the light, and when it moved, tiny sparkles danced across its surface like captured starlight. This was Supreme Arbiter Vexthi of the Zephyrian Council, one of the most powerful beings in known space. Thank you for having us, Supreme Arbiter, Maria replied, proud that her voice remained steady. Humanity is honored by this opportunity. Vexthi's head tilted slightly, and Maria noticed that where humans had eyes, the Zephyrian had clusters of small gems that glowed with inner fire. Honor is something that must be earned, young human. Come, the council awaits. They walked through corridors that seemed to defy physics, with gravity shifting smoothly from floor to wall to ceiling as they moved deeper into the station. Maria had read about Zephyrian architecture, but experiencing it firsthand was something else entirely. The walls around them were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them, and the air itself hummed with barely contained energy. Tell me, Captain Santos, Vexthi said as they walked, what do you know of the Zephyrian homeworlds? Maria had studied extensively for this meeting. Your species evolved on the desert planets of the Zarian system, worlds where water exists only in trace amounts in the atmosphere, and surface temperatures can reach extreme levels. Your people developed the ability to extract moisture directly from air, and can survive for months without liquid water. Adequate, Vexthi replied, though Maria detected what might have been approval in the alien's tone. And what do you know of our trials? This was the question Maria had been dreading. I know that species seeking council membership must prove their worth through challenges suited to their nature. I know that the Zephyrian trials are considered among the most difficult in the galaxy. They entered a vast chamber that took Maria's breath away. The room was shaped like a perfect sphere, with platforms extending out from the walls at impossible angles. Hundreds of alien beings occupied these platforms, representing species from across the galaxy. At the center of the sphere, suspended in what appeared to be empty air, was a raised dais where the Zephyrian High Council waited. "Behold," HFY announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber despite the vast space. "The human delegation seeks membership in our august body." A wave of sound washed over Maria as various aliens responded in their own languages. She heard clicks and whistles, deep rumbling growls, and sounds that had no equivalent in human experience. On one platform, a group of beings that looked like giant praying mantises made of black metal were clicking their razor-sharp mandibles together in what she assumed was laughter. "Silence," commanded another Zephyrian from the central dais, and the chamber fell quiet instantly. This one was even larger than HFY, with skin that shifted from deep purple to silver as the light caught it. "I am High Arbiter Speaker for the Zephyrian people. Human, you seek membership in this council. Many species have made such requests. Few have proven worthy." Maria stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice clear. "We don't claim to be the strongest or the most advanced, but humans have one quality that might be valuable to the council. We adapt, we survive, we find ways to live and thrive in conditions that others consider impossible." The mantis-like aliens clicked more rapidly, and Maria heard what sounded like scoffs from several other groups. A creature that looked like a living flame flickered brighter in what might have been amusement. "Adaptation," Zixmal repeated, the word echoing through the chamber. "Survival. These are bold claims for such a young species. Perhaps you would be willing to prove them." Maria felt Dr. Chen tense beside her, but she kept her focus on the High Arbiter. "If that's what it takes for membership, yes. Excellent." Zixmal's skin flared with internal light, casting rainbow patterns on the walls around them. "Then you will face the desert trial, as is our ancient custom. This trial has been attempted by 63 species over the past 2 millennia. 63 have failed." The chamber erupted in excited sounds again. Maria could see beings leaning forward on their platforms, clearly anticipating a spectacle. The mantis creatures were practically vibrating with excitement. "What does the trial involve?" Maria asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Survival," Zixmal said simply. 10 solar cycles in the scorching sands, the most hostile desert environment in this sector of the galaxy. You will be given basic survival equipment and transported to the center of the wasteland. If you survive, your species gains council membership. If you fail, the alien made a sound like wind through crystal chimes that Maria assumed was their version of a shrug. Another Zephyrian stepped forward. The scorching sands cover 12,000 square kilometers. Surface temperatures reach 60 degrees Celsius during the day and drop to -29 at night. There are no water sources within 2,000 kilometers of the drop zone. The longest any species has survived is for solar cycles. Maria looked around the chamber at the assembled aliens. Some looked interested, others bored, and a few seemed almost sad for her. The mantis beings were clicking so rapidly now, it sounded like machine gun fire. Clearly excited by the prospect of watching her die slowly in the desert. The evolved on worlds like this, HFY explained, his voice taking on what might have been pride. Our bodies are designed for extreme desert survival. We can store water for months and extract moisture from air with less than 1% humidity. This trial tests whether other species possess even a fraction of our capabilities. Dr. Chen had briefed Maria on this during their journey. The Zephyrians used the desert trial as both a test and a way to demonstrate their superiority. They genuinely believed that no other species could match their desert mastery, and they used the trial to prove it. The fact that no one had ever passed only reinforced their belief that they were the galaxy's ultimate survivors. "I accept the trial," Maria said without hesitation. Asterisk. The chamber exploded in chaos. The mantis beings clicked so rapidly it sounded like breaking glass. Creatures that looked like living gemstones chimed in harmonious notes, and dozens of other species added their own voices to the mix. Through it all, Zixmore stood perfectly still, watching Maria with what might have been curiosity. "Very well," the High Arbiter said once the noise died down. "You will be given 1 solar cycle to prepare. Your equipment will be limited to what we consider basic survival gear. No advanced technology, no weapons, no communication devices. You will have 1 shelter unit, 1 water container, basic tools, and standard food rations for 10 cycles. Maria nodded, understood. "The trial begins at dawn tomorrow," Zixmore announced to the chamber. "All council members are welcome to observe. I suspect this will be ... educational." As Maria turned to leave, she caught sight of Dr. Chen beside her. The old scientist's face was pale, but he gave her a small nod of encouragement. He believed she could do this, even if no one else in the chamber did. Walking back through the crystal corridors, Maria thought about the desert survival training she had received as a young officer. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her about surviving in the Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, and the techniques she had learned from Bedouin guides in the Sahara. The aliens saw this as an impossible test, but humans had been surviving in deserts for thousands of years. Tomorrow she would show them what human adaptation really meant. The transport ship dropped Maria Santos into hell at exactly dawn. The moment the cargo doors opened, a wave of heat hit her like a physical blow, making her eyes water and her lungs burn with each breath. The desert stretched out in every direction, an endless sea of red sand and black rock that shimmered in the rising sun, like a mirage of death itself. Maria jumped from the ship's loading ramp and hit the ground running, knowing she had only seconds before the heat became unbearable. The transport lifted off immediately, leaving her alone in the vast wasteland with nothing but her basic survival kit and the knowledge that 200 alien species were watching from orbit, waiting for her to fail. The silence was complete and terrifying. No wind, no birds, no insects, nothing but the sound of her own breathing and heartbeat. The air was so dry it seemed to suck moisture from her mouth and nose with every breath. Maria could already feel sweat beading on her forehead, and she knew that losing water through perspiration would kill her faster than anything else in this place. She looked around quickly, taking in the landscape. Red sand dunes rolled away. To the north and south, some of them 60 feet high. To the east and west, jagged black rocks jutted up from the desert floor like broken teeth. The rocks looked volcanic, probably formed millions of years ago when this world was young. There was no sign of life anywhere, not even the smallest desert plant or the tracks of any animal. But Maria Santos had not come this far to give up at the first sign of difficulty. She pulled out her water container and took a small sip, just enough to wet her mouth. The water was already warm from the heat, and she knew it would be scalding within hours. She had exactly 2 liters to start with, and according to her calculations, The average human needed at least 4 liters per day to survive in extreme heat. Simple math told her she would be dead in 2 days, unless she found more water, or found a way to make what she had last much longer. As the alien observers watched from their comfortable ships above, Captain Maria Santos began to do something that would change their understanding of what it meant to be human forever. She began to survive. Water from nothing high above the scorching sands. Supreme Arbiter Vexai watched the monitoring screens with growing fascination. The human had been on the surface for 18 hours now, and her vital signs were holding steady despite conditions that should have killed her twice over. Around him, representatives from dozens of alien species crowded the observation deck, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, and electronic tones as they discussed the unexpected development. "Impossible," muttered Commander Rylock, a 7-foot-tall Threnody whose reptilian features were twisted in disbelief. "Look at these readings. The surface temperature is 58 degrees Celsius, and she's still moving around." On the main screen, they could see Captain Maria Santos working methodically in the shade of a makeshift shelter she had constructed between 2 large rocks. She moved slowly and deliberately, conserving energy while she sorted through materials that looked like nothing more than debris from her survival kit. "What is she doing?" asked Dr. Zilanara, a floating jellyfish-like being from the aquatic collective. Her translucent body pulsed with confused patterns of blue and green light. "Those materials cannot provide water. Our sensors confirm there. There's no moisture source within 2,000 kilometers." Vexthai said nothing, but his crystalline skin flickered with colors that indicated intense concentration. The Zephyrians had evolved their trial specifically because they believed no other species could match their mastery of waterless environments. They could extract moisture from air so dry that most beings would die just breathing it. Yet somehow, this human was not only surviving, but appeared to be thriving. Down on the surface, Maria was putting together a device that would have made her grandmother proud. Using the reflective inner surface of her emergency blanket, the clear plastic from her food rations, and the metal components of her shelter frame, she was constructing a solar still based on designs that had been used by desert dwellers on Earth for thousands of years. The principle was simple but effective. Even in the driest desert, there was always some moisture in the air and in the ground beneath the surface. By creating a sealed environment where the sun's heat could evaporate that tiny amount of water and then condense it on a cool surface, she could collect drops of precious liquid that would otherwise be lost to the atmosphere. "Come on, Maria," whispered to herself as she adjusted the angle of the reflective surface. Grandma Rosa survived 3 weeks in the Atacama with nothing but cloth and rocks. You can do better than that. Her grandmother had been a geologist who had studied the world's most extreme deserts. Rosa Santos had taught Maria that water was everywhere, even in places that seemed completely dry. You just had to know how to find it and how to convince it to come to you. As the sun climbed higher, Maria's solar still began to work. Tiny droplets of condensation formed on the plastic surface and rolled down into the collection container. At the bottom, it wasn't much, perhaps a few milliliters per hour, but it was water where none should exist. The alien observers were growing more agitated by the hour. Commander Rylock paced back and forth on his 6 legs, his tail lashing with frustration. "This is impossible. Our instruments show no water sources. How can she be creating liquid from nothing?" "She's not creating it," Vextiak said slowly, his voice filled with something that might have been wonder. "She's collecting it. Look at these atmospheric readings. There are trace amounts of water vapor in the air, less than 0.5%. Timidity, we considered it negligible. It is negligible. Dr. Zilanara pulsed with indignant red patterns. No known species can survive on such minute amounts of moisture. But down on the surface, Maria was proving them wrong. As the second day progressed, she expanded her operation. Using techniques learned from Aboriginal Australians, she began digging carefully selected spots where underground moisture might collect. The sand was bone dry on the surface, but 3 feet down, she found slightly damp earth that yielded precious drops when pressed through cloth. By the third day, Maria had 3 different water collection systems running simultaneously. Her solar still provided a steady trickle during the day. Her underground moisture collectors gave her small amounts of water when she pressed the damp sand through makeshift filters. And at night, when the temperature dropped dramatically, she used her emergency blanket to collect dew that formed on the metal surfaces of her equipment. By the ancestors, whispered High Arbiter Zixmao as he joined the observation group. She has created multiple water sources in a place where we detected none. How is this possible? Vexthai's skin was now cycling through colors none of the other species had ever seen before, indicating emotional states that had no equivalent in their experience. She is not extracting water the way we do, through specialized organs and evolutionary adaptations. She is using knowledge, techniques, methods passed down through generations of her species. Impossible, Commander Rillock insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Knowledge cannot create water where none exists, can it not? Vexthai asked. Watch her work, Commander. Every movement is purposeful. Every decision is based on principles we do not understand. She is not simply surviving, she is thriving. Indeed, by the 4th day, Maria had enough water that she was able to increase her rations slightly. She had also discovered that certain rocks in the area contained mineral salts that, when dissolved in small amounts, helped her body retain the water she was collecting. Her energy levels were actually improving rather than declining. The alien observers were now watching in stunned silence. Species that had failed the desert trial after mere hours were seeing a human not only survive, but actually improve her situation day by day. The implications were staggering. She will complete the trial, Dr. Zilanara said, her patterns now cycling through colors that indicated shock and awe. A species we considered primitive will succeed where 63 others have failed. On the 5th day, Maria made a discovery that changed everything. While expanding one of her underground collection points, she uncovered a layer of stone that was slightly different from the surrounding rock. When she cracked it open, she found tiny pockets of crystallized water that had been trapped there for perhaps millions of years. The rocks were everywhere once you knew what to look for. Within hours, Maria had collected enough water to last her for weeks, but more importantly, she had proven something that the aliens were only beginning to understand. Knowledge, Vexthai said quietly as they watched Maria efficiently extract water from stones the Zephyrians had walked past for millennia. She survives not through biological adaptation, but through the accumulated wisdom of her species. Every human carries within them the knowledge of every human who came before. The trial officially ended on the 10th day, but Maria could have continued indefinitely. When the transport ship came to retrieve her, she had established a small oasis in the center of the supposedly waterless desert. Her multiple collection systems were producing more water than she could use, and she had even begun growing small plants from seeds she had saved from her food rations. The return to Zerian Station was unlike anything Maria had experienced, as She walked through the corridors that had seemed so intimidating 10 days earlier. Aliens stopped what they were doing to stare at her. The mantis beings that had clicked with such amusement at her initial appearance now stepped aside respectfully. Creatures she had never seen before inclined their heads as she passed. In the great spherical chamber, the assembled council waited in complete silence. When High Arbiter Zixmal spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier condescension. "Captain Maria Santos of Earth," he said, his crystalline form glowing with patterns of deep respect, "you have accomplished something that we believed impossible. You have not merely survived our trial, you have transcended it." Maria stood straight, but humble before the assembled aliens. "With respect, High Arbiter, I didn't do anything impossible. I simply used knowledge that my species has been gathering for thousands of years. Every human who ever lived in a desert, who ever faced impossible odds and survived, contributed to what I was able to accomplish out there." "Yes, Vex," Thai said from beside the central dais. "This is what we failed to understand. Your species does not adapt through evolution alone. You adapt through wisdom shared across generations. Each of you carries the knowledge of your entire..." Species Commander Rylock stepped forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by something approaching reverence. "We have been fools," he admitted. "We judged your species by your technology, by your individual capabilities. We failed to see that. Your greatest strength is your ability to learn from each other, to build upon the knowledge of those who came before." The vote was unanimous. Not only was humanity granted membership in the Galactic Council, but Captain Maria Santos was invited to establish an academy of adaptive survival, where representatives from across the galaxy could learn the techniques that had allowed her to create water from nothing and life from life. LESSNESS. As Maria looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces now regarding her with respect and wonder, she thought about her grandmother, Rosa, who had taught her that the desert was never empty if you knew how to look. She thought about the Bedouin guides who had shown her that water could be found in the most unlikely places. She thought about every human who had ever faced the impossible and decided to try anyway. "Thank you," she said simply. "We look forward to sharing what we've learned and to learning from all of you in return." High above the scorching sands, the desert that had defeated 63 species continued its eternal existence. But now it was no longer quite as empty as it had been. In a small area where Captain Maria Santos had spent 10 days, tiny green plants continued to grow, fed by water collection systems that would work for years to come. The impossible had become possible, one drop at a time.